What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? I know we've been doing a lot of NASCAR videos. We're trying to get prep for football, and there's only one way to really get practice, and that is to start doing drafts, mock drafts, jumping in the best ball draft. So I'm really excited to jump into this mock draft today.
Yeah. So today we're going to do a full PPR mock with a little bit of a wrinkle. Brian and I both traditionally prefer grabbing receivers and or non-running backs early. And in this one, we're going to force ourselves in a PPR draft to draft two running backs first and then go from there. So
It
we're going to have
feels
to lock in
disgusting.
those. That's not something we normally do. But I think it's good to challenge yourself and draft a few different ways and see if you still like the way that you think you like to draft and see how your teams come out and see how they go from there. But as Brian mentioned, we have been doing a lot of NASCAR, but we do also have quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. We just posted tight ends last week, our top 12-ish at the position. Brian and I will be doing updates to that. I will also try and get my rankings up on fakepigskin.com very, very soon. I have them basically done with tiers and all that good stuff for you guys to have for draft season. So hopefully we'll have that for you very soon. But Brian, let's jump into it, and we will look. So as I mentioned, we are doing a PPR full draft. We're doing from the 6th spot with 12 teams. We're going to draft a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then 3 bench spots. Don't go too crazy. And then once we launch this, we'll see what it looks like.
And before we get started, let's just say this is my least favorite spot to draft from.
So we are in the middle. We were on the 101 last time when we did our half. This time we're doing our full. Let me see if I can zoom out just a little bit. Let's look at the draft board. So here we are on the clock. Much like I expect many, many drafts to go, we were running back heavy. McCaffrey, Dalvin, Henry, Zeke, Alvin Kamara. Those are your top 5. We can go to suggestions. I don't know if we can look at. So let me see. Let's just go to running backs. So we got Saquon, we got Jonathan Taylor, we got Austin Eckler, we got Aaron Jones. Austin Eckler last year had quite a few catches despite not playing a full season. 54 receptions on 65 targets. You expect that volume to be there. Aaron Jones, another guy that not only has the running back workload, but has the 63 targets, 47 catches. Jonathan Taylor is somebody that I've come around on significantly. Let me see. Yeah. So, I mean, I think these are the realistic options unless there's somebody else you really like. But I'm trying to see if I can just look at all the players. Okay, maybe we can do this. Yeah, so here we go. So let me pull up the running backs here. These are their tiers. These aren't our tiers, but it'll give us more names. So Saquon, Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones. Nick Chubb's interesting in most drafts, but at this point in a full PPR, I think he can be a pass. Mixon, Akers, Antonio Gibson, we like him. Maybe he's the guy we grab on the way back. DeAndre Swift. So I think it's really just these 4. Brian, is there a name that jumps out for you?
This is part of the reason why I hate drafting from this spot. And every year, it doesn't matter what kind of like athletes there are there or whatever. This spot you run in, I think, to the most difficulty in terms of the reason why we go 0 RB or modified 0 RB right here is because now you're getting towards the back end of those tier 1 guys, top end of the tier 2 who wind up being kind of the same dude. And if you're going based solely off of rankings, obviously you're going to go Saquon. But like for me, in a full PPR league, I'm looking at a guy like Austin Eckler who could potentially approach 100 receptions as a running back. Even if he's getting nowhere near the same volume on the ground as Saquon, those catches are huge in a full PPR league. So
Yeah, so I think the discussion is Saquon, who has missed time and basically didn't play all of last year. I think Austin Eckler, who in a full PPR gets a nice bump. And then what do you think of Jonathan Taylor? Because I like Taylor's a guy I've come around on a lot more. I expect to be involved. Expect the Colts offense to be solid, but they do have Naheem Hines there, who will have a very specific role, and Marlon Mack, who's there. Um, so should we just lock in Austin Eckler, lock in those catches, lock in a guy who's probably going to be the guy?
see, but then even there though, are we missing out on a potential unicorn at the position in Saquon Barkley, even coming off of that torn ACL? I mean, out of college, being such a high draft pick, the expectation is that he is going to be that 3-down guy, get 80 to 90% of the rushing attempts, and also be the passing down dude. So
yep. And I told you I like Daniel Dimes. I like this Giants offense. I like the pieces. I like the addition of Galladay. I'm very happy to take Saquon if you want to just lock that in.
yeah, I think it'd be too difficult to pass on the potential of Saquon.
Okay, let's take a look at the draft board. So after Saquon, it's Stephon Diggs. Make this a little bigger. See if I can. After Saquon, Stephon Diggs, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Kelce, Aaron Jones. See Kelce, I love that pick. And it's
Man, Chubb before Eckler in a full PPR.
it's an interesting move. But one I could definitely see in a home league. Maybe not necessarily in a quote unquote experts league.
Yeah.
Cam Akers is off the board. So, we lost a few running backs. We can go to the cheat sheet, I think they call it. Or where was it? Was it cheat sheet I was looking at? No. Pick predictor?
I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks weird now. Oh, yeah, I think it just opened up more. No, because there was a way I could look at it by position. Here's a bunch of names over here too. So we have Najee, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's a guy we've been talking about. In terms of PPR, gets a nice little bump.
I'll just say right off the bat, for me, the pick is CEH. I just think that because everyone is kind of down on, I mean, I can't really say down, but from what the expectation was last year going into this year, I think he's a good value.
Antonio Gibson was a guy who, when he wasn't really even supposed to be a thing, got 44 targets in the passing game. I expect Fitzmagic to be able to move that offense more consistently every week. Could be a guy that challenges for 50 catches. I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I do believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I believe, we talked about our expectations in probably the best offense in all of football.
Projected to be the highest scoring offense.
Joe Mixon's been a guy that I know a lot of people are getting hyped on. His upside is incredible. Catches a lot of passes when everything goes right. Has a lot of potential to be really involved and really good, but is also an offense that could be a little bit of a mess if things don't go perfect. I'm happy to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that's.
I know you're big on Najee, but
yeah, but in full PPR, and like I said, that Steelers offensive line took a big hit when they got rid of DeCastro, so I'm a little less optimistic about him, and I think him being kind of in that second, third round range makes a lot more sense than that first round consideration that I had. All right, let's go back to the cheat sheet. We got a lot to look into, Brian. But let's look at the draft board. So all the tight ends, Kelce, Waller, Kittle off the board. So that basically eliminates them. Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill. There's been a lot of receivers. And I think that's kind of where we are. So we have an Allen Robinson who volume should be there. I love what they're doing. We haven't done our Bears podcast, but that should be happening eventually. You're a little more optimistic on the Andy Dalton situation. Your boy Amari Cooper is sitting there. Chris Godwin, Robert Woods. There's a lot of receivers that are really interesting from a receiver standpoint. I mean, I think both of us are fine passing on Mahomes here. Like third
Yeah,
round,
no.
we took 2 running backs. Let's avoid Mahomes.
Yeah, I have no
Um,
interest in taking the first quarterback off the
so
board.
for you, what names are jumping out among wide receivers? Let's just pull up all the wideouts.
Um, I mean, it's Fantasy Pros has it listed correctly for me in this particular spot. I mean, Terry McLaurin and Allen Robinson for me are clearly the top two left, just basing it off of the volume that they're going to see in their respective offenses. I think Allen Robinson, regardless of whether or not it's Justin Fields or the guy that I think will benefit him the most, Andy Dalton, is going to see, upwards of 150 targets, approach that 85 to 90 minimum receptions for 1,200 plus yards again, and in all likelihood increase maybe his scoring because this offense will maybe be a little bit more efficient. So I don't see why you would be down on him or want to pass on him here. And then Terry McLaurin getting Curtis Samuel over there in Washington with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who will air the ball out. I think this could be his breakout season now that there is another guy on the outside that teams kind of have to focus on a little bit more as opposed to last year and the previous year where there was nobody out there opposite Terry McLaurin. So I think in terms of like the potential to have a humongous season, I like Terry McLaurin, but knowing what you're getting, that's got to be Allen Robinson.
Yeah, and I think based on kind of what we've done so far, I'd like to lock in those targets. And for me, in my rankings, Allen Robinson would be next. Terry McLaurin is in the same tier. Chris Godwin is in the same tier. So I wouldn't fault anybody going that way, but I think Allen Robinson is the pick. So there goes Mahomes. There goes Josh Allen. There goes Terry
Woo!
McLaurin.
Josh Allen, number two.
Evans, Robert Woods. There goes J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is somebody that in PPR I get a little more excited, but Kenneth Gainwell is going to be, I think, a little more of an issue than people want to admit. Back to wide receivers for me. I think we double tap here. Chris Godwin is incredibly compelling. I like the addition of Sam Darnold for DJ Moore.
Yes.
But Deontay Johnson, that volume,
yes.
that is something that, I could find myself. Robert Woods is somebody that I think could be interesting, or did he go?
He got, where'd he go? He went right after Evans.
Okay. So yeah. So he's gone. So yeah, what's your head saying? Is there a name for you?
It's kind of weird. I don't know why. Again, I'm downplaying Tom Brady and the Bucks because Godwin, as appealing as he is, it's hard for me to get on board with them having another humongous season on offense. I mean, the wheels are going to fall off at some point for Brady, or even the skills diminish. The team protect him a little bit because they should win this division pretty handily. I mean, DJ Moore with Sam Darnold, but how confident are we in that? For me, I think that we've talked about him before. It's Deontay Johnson, just knowing the infinity that Ben Roethlisberger has for him, the amount of times that he's seen double-digit targets in a game, how Ben goes to him in the red zone. I think Deontay Johnson is a guy who this year will kind of take that leap like A-Rob has done over the previous two or three.
Yeah. So I love Deontay Johnson, and I think he's absolutely worthy of the conversation, but I think we need to go Godwin. 7, 6, 7, 9, 6, 6, 10, 9, 3, 4, 5, 9, 7, injury. Comes back for the playoffs, 12, 7, 9, and then obviously 4 in the Super Bowl. It didn't, it was a blowout. It was over quick. I think Godwin's so important to what they do. I think Mike Evans is seemingly a non-factor, which is kind of weird with what they did last year. Like Brady would find like Scotty Miller or whoever random guy and not throw to Mike Evans for some reason.
Yeah.
And as much as I like DJ Moore and Deontay Thompson, there is a clear tier break on this mock draft simulator, and there is a clear tier break for me to get to those next guys. So my pick would be Chris Godwin.
All right, I can
go with that.
I can go that direction since CEH was kind of.
Let's see what we get when we do that. So there goes Thielen, a couple more quarterbacks, Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore. There goes Deontay. Kenny Galladay, which I think is an interesting and nice little sleeper pick in the 5th round. I'd be very happy to snag him there. So let's see what we got. We got Hawkinson, very interesting at tight end. Both of us typically like to wait, but interesting pick. Miles Gaskin, Mark Andrews, another tight end. They got my Dak Prescott. Kareem Hunt in full PPR could be incredibly interesting, especially if he's got a safe floor. He would be our 3rd option, and then if something happens to Nick Chubb and he gets elevated, that's a league winner.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk, Juju. We can pass on Kyle Pitts. I don't know if we could look at hammering receivers, but there's a bunch of names. I don't know if I feel great about any of those names over the other, unless you wanted to go someone like Odell, who has a ton of upside and
I
could
was just
pop.
gonna say, Odell has the upside of a wide receiver 1 out
Yep.
of that crew, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, other
And
than
with
that,
Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin, we got our safety. We got solid options. Probably both going to be in that 10 to 15 ish range in PPR, maybe a little bit higher. We could shoot for the moon. The other options, if we head over to running back, I think Kareem Hunt. I love Chase Edmonds as our Austin Eckler light. Mike Davis could be in play. I don't think either of us want to take a quarterback, and at tight end, there's a few names there, but nobody that it screams
no.
to me. So I think that the debate is, do we take Odell or do we take one of those
I
running
would
backs?
I would lean Odell or Edmonds, just knowing the kind of offense that Arizona is going to have. I know for
Yeah.
me, I worry about his red zone usage,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, in a full PPR league, they're not going to deploy James Conner as the receiving back there. He's
Yep.
going to be kind of the Kenyon Drake in between the tackles kind of dude, and then Edmonds is going to do his thing. And I would expect to see his role actually expand this season. So for me, the debate is Edmonds or Odell, and
Yep. And I think with Mike Davis and Kareem Hunt and Chase Edmonds, all of which I'd be fine with, even Raheem Mostert if we go down that far. I think and with at receiver, really Odell as a clear outright for all of these receivers. I think we take him and see what we get at running back.
yes, that sounds like the play for me.
And this is the logic you should be using when you're sitting making your draft picks. Looking at what's ahead of us. What are the other teams done? Okay, we can look which teams have tight ends. We got a bunch of teams taking tight ends. Which teams have quarterbacks? Planning your attack, and obviously when you're in the middle, it's a little more of a challenge. If you're on the ends, it's a little easier to kind of plan ahead, especially if you're like, say, the 10th pick. You can be like, okay, both these teams have tight ends, so if I take I'll take something else here and then grab my tight end on the way back, with all the likelihood saying that's going to be in play. So Brian, we still have Kareem Hunt, we still have Chase Edmonds, both of them sitting there. Our plan came to fruition. Dak Prescott is still there, but I feel good about almost all the quarterbacks like Matt Ryan, Ryan Tannehill, Jalen Hurts.
See that?
Kirk
Okay, so
Cousins. I'm fine with all those guys.
normally I would be in the same boat as you.
Okay.
However, looking at the way the draft fell to us,
Uh-huh.
getting a guy like Dak here potentially,
Mm-hmm.
who we've seen. I mean, if last year was any indication about what this offense is going to be
Yeah.
under the new regime and with the weapons that he has, I mean, both Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb in this draft alone were selected, before the end of the 4th round.
Yep.
If he's got targets like that,
And
what are
Ezekiel
we?
Elliott, between him and Tony Pollard, there should be 75, 80 targets easy.
Yeah, so I mean, and
Let's do
the
it.
fact that Tom Brady got drafted before Dak, I think that's
Let's get out of our comfort zone. We started with 2 running backs. Let's take a quarterback in the middle rounds. I love having that locked in safety. He has QB1 upside, and
oh
three more QBs went after him. And look what else is sitting there for us. All of our running backs are still there. This is
just
beautiful.
hammer the Chase Edmonds pick.
Okay,
This
done
would
deal.
be the pick here for sure.
Perfect. God, this is going fantastic. This is just going fantastic. So we have our quarterback locked in. We have Dak. We have three running backs in Saquon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Chase Edmonds. All in PPR have 50 catch upside, maybe more. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Odell all have tremendous upside. Could be top 10 guys, maybe top 5 guys in PPR. So we're sitting here great. We obviously need to take a tight end in the next 3 picks, but unless you are going to stand on the table and scream out of the top of your lungs that you want one of these guys over the rest,
Yeah, no,
there's nobody
that's not
there for
happening
me
for
that I'm
me.
like, oh my gosh.
Nope.
We can look at receivers. We got DJ Chark, Debo, Will Fuller's interesting. Brandon Cooks,
Dude,
perpetually underrated.
yes.
We could look at running backs, but we have Saquon, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we have Chase Edmonds in PPR. We're probably starting 2, maybe 3 if it's an amazing matchup and our receivers have predicaments. So I don't know that any of these running backs are screaming value. Trey Sermon could be interesting. I know
Well,
you're
Damian
interviewing
Harris
for
for the Patriots ain't getting any receptions.
Zach Moss. Like Ramondre Stevenson would be somebody in full PPR that I think I could find myself going to. Jarvis in full PPR is always more compelling. Let me see what I
Even
have.
Curtis Samuel
Mm-hmm.
sitting there.
Sure.
Like I said, when talking about Terry McLaurin, now that they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, I expect this offense to open up a little bit more, and the offense will probably be funneled through like 3 guys on the outside. You won't see those games with those randos getting 3-4 catches. It's going to be McLaurin, Samuel, and Logan Thomas with Gibson and whoever they want to deploy as the number 2 guy back there.
Yeah.
So
As gross as it is to say, I think Will Fuller would be an incredible upside shot here. If Tua can bring it all together, I think Fuller has the potential to be. And we saw what he started to do before the suspension last year. I will always stand on the table for Brandon Cooks and my guy OHIO Curtis Samuel. I'm happy with all of those 3. So I've driven a lot of the conversation. Although you took Dak and we were both on board with Chase Edmonds. I guess if you had to make a pick here, where are you going?
I'm sticking with old reliable Brandon Cooks because,
Okay.
I mean, at this point, we're not looking for a guy who's going to win us a week. You're trying to fill your bench
Mm-hmm.
at least early with guys that can be placeholders or fillers, and you know what you're getting with Brandon Cooks, one of the most consistent wide receivers over the last 6 or so years.
We had a running back run: Ronald Jones, Damian Harris, Zach Moss, Trey Sermon, David Johnson, Naheem Hines, James Conner. DJ Chark, the only receiver. So Will Fuller's still sitting there. Jerry Judy's there. Jarvis Landry's there. I'm gonna stand on the table and take Will Fuller. I think
He offers the most boom for sure.
there's a ton of upside there. I think we have enough depth where if he gets injured or has to miss a ton of time, then we're fine. And as much as you could say, well, Brandon Cooks, quarterback issue, sure. But if Deshaun Watson ends up playing, then we have a super value. If he doesn't, we'll see what they can do. But even on garbage offenses with terrible
Yep.
quarterbacks, if you get 100 targets, you're still super valuable. So let's take Will Fuller here, and then there goes a bunch more running backs and one receiver. Okay, we're gonna lock in our tight end here now. So we've waited. Obviously, we could go a little deeper and keep waiting if we were doing more rounds. In this draft, we're only doing 10 rounds. I mean, I feel like we did this on our last draft, but for me, the tight end that offers the most upside is Evan Ingram. I think if this offense is healthy, if he can stay healthy, which we saw last year, I think Daniel Jones takes a step forward like I expect. I think he makes sense. I think Mike Gesicki makes sense. Obviously, as a pure pass catcher from the tight end position, we saw what Robert Tonyan can do, but he did so much with touchdowns. I'm wondering
Yes.
if volume plays in. We could go with either of the Patriots guys, but I don't know that I feel great about one or the other. So if forced to take a tight end, Who's getting your vote?
Man, this is really hard because I try not to stack guys on the same team
In
for
season
teams
long?
that I don't expect are going to be good,
Yeah.
especially in season long. So, like for instance, because we have Saquon, I worry that him and Ingram are battling for the same kind of targets.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm slightly worried there. But then again, we just took Will Fuller, who's on the same team as Mike Gesicki, and Gesicki is kind of that deep seam tight end.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
for me, I think those are the two names, and like we could go
yeah.
with Tanyan if we just want to avoid that conversation. But if you're betting on one of these offenses to take a step forward, is it with Daniel Jones and the Giants getting Kenny Galladay, getting with a healthy Saquon, having Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, or are you betting on Tua taking that step forward in year two, making a tremendous stride, and then with Will Fuller and Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki? So if you had to bet on one of those offenses to take a step forward, which one would you bet on?
I think in terms of scoring and what they bring on in terms of potential, I'd probably go the Giants.
Okay, I know that pains you as a Cowboys fan. But when we're doing fantasy, we have to be realistic and we have to leave our fanhood to the side, even just a little bit. Obviously, you can find ways to sneak in some of your favorite pieces. I think Evan Ingram's the pick. I will continue to draft him, especially in any one tight end leagues,
Oh
because
yeah.
he's so
No,
easy to replace. You
exactly.
I'm
That's
fine with
we
Troutman.
talked about this.
I'm fine with Austin Hooper. I'm fine with Hayden Hurst if he becomes a guy. Cole Kmet. Like I like a lot of these names. So if we realize that Ingram's just not going to be involved and Galladay is going to take more of that work, and or this Giants offense doesn't take a step forward like I expect, you cut him. You're on to the next. You move forward.
Exactly.
All right, Brian, we did it. We drafted another championship winner. There's the draft grade.
Oh, screw you, teacher.
Honestly, I like the worse draft grade I get, the better I feel about my team
Yes, I agree. Because you're
because it's
not
all
going
it's all
with
based
their
upon what they're doing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's not they're basing it off of their like pre-designed ranking system.
yep, fantastic. Yeah. So we got Dak. We got 5 receivers. We can play 3 of them every week. We got Evan Ingram, and then we can rotate Chase Edmonds, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Saquon Barkley. So if we're we can kind of bring this back to just us, but like if we have this team or we're looking longer, we can look up some ADP here, and I can go, okay, let's look at some in PPR. We'll scroll down to look at some double digit round running backs that we can possibly take. Gio Bernard in Tampa Bay, absolutely interesting to me. Um, Ditto for James White. Ditto for Kenneth Gainwell. Ditto for what's his name? Ramondre Stevenson. So even we have our locked and loaded running backs. We have our options that we feel good about. And then we take some shots and hopefully hit somebody. And then those are the guys that we're able to, when the ones that don't hit, we move on really easily.
Yeah, and I also feel too, especially when looking at the way the league has transitioned over the past couple of years, the running back position is so heavily rotated on a game by game basis in terms of not many teams deploy one guy all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So there are going to be weeks where a guy gets injured and then some guy from the practice squad gets called up and he winds up seeing all the third down work. And I think you see more impact guys come from the free agent market in terms from the running back position than you would with the wide receivers because there's so many of them. It's
Yeah.
hard to find those guys.
Yeah, I mean, and we could take shots on Tony Pollard, on Alexander Madison as guys with upside. We can take shots on Darrell Henderson. We can look at a guy like Naheem Hines when in the right role, in the right matchups, you're going to be able to deploy him as the pass catcher, and he's obviously going to have the boom weeks. It's easier
Yeah.
in best ball because you don't have to worry about starting, sitting, whatever. But I think we drafted a solid squad. I like the direction. I like the conversation we had around all the players. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the comments, let us know what player did we miss on. Who should we have drafted instead, or what player did we drafted should we have avoided, and let us know why. Because I think we're always looking to improve and get better as drafters, and doing things like mock drafts and best ball drafts, and this stuff kind of helps you build and forcing us into a position that Brian and I don't really like. Took 2 running backs early, took a
No.
quarterback at the 6th round. And Brian, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we kind of like the team that we built here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess there is some value to be had from pass catchers beyond like the first couple of rounds that
Mhm.
you can find guys who could potentially get
Sure.
those top 10 finishes at the position. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around going that general direction, but I
But we
mean
could also have
there might be a
Saquon blow out an
scenario.
ACL. We could have Clyde Edwards-Helaire be a bit piece at best. We could have Chase Edmonds get completely supplanted by James Conner, and then we are just screwed at running back. And like you said, maybe we add Alexander Madison and Tony Pollard and James White, and it ends up working out. We can cobble it together. That's why, especially in PPR, I feel so good about grabbing those pass catchers and just piecing
Yes.
it together, knowing I have studs at wideout, and I'm playing every single week. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Odell Beckham, Will Fuller, or Brandon Cooks. Like I'm feeling good about where my receivers are, and I've locked in Dak Prescott. So at quarterback, I'm not really stressing except for his bye week. And then Evan Ingram is, I'm happy to cut or I can hold on to. Um,
It'll
but
be interesting too because with the roster that we drafted, we got two of the most heavily injured guys
mhm,
throughout their careers in Fuller and Ingram. And with the 17-game schedule now, we're looking at the potential of slightly more injuries or more rest time. Like I think this season is going to be really interesting for fantasy because you may see teams kind of slow down on players playing time, especially
yeah,
early on in the season to kind of save them. So you may be finding guys that are worthy of starting every week on the waiver wires early on if they're not performing. So just be prepared for stuff like that.
yeah. So a couple things from what you just said. First, my fantasy league, we do 2-week playoffs. So this adding the extra week is going to be perfect for my leagues because now we don't have to worry about that week 17 nonsense. And the interesting thing is there's players you like, but their ADP is just too high for you, you're just like, I can't. When there's
Yeah.
other names there, be ready to pounce on them. Be ready to make a low ball offer in week 2, week 3 when they're not living up to standards. Be ready for an overzealous commissioner to make cuts that he probably or she probably should not be making at that point, and be ready to use your waiver wire priority, use your fab to scoop them up.
Oh
Because,
yeah.
like Brian said, the first month of the season, they could be in a quote unquote committee, and then all of a sudden by week 6, they're opening it up and Jonathan Taylor's getting all the volume, or Cam Akers is getting all the volume, or
Antonio Gibson last year.
so that's something to consider as well. So while you don't necessarily win the league at the draft table, you don't want to you want to try and avoid those huge pitfalls. But
Yeah, I
those first few weeks are super critical on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I feel like I've read articles. Matthew Berry has said it. All sorts of other pundits, Brad Evans, all these other professionals in the industry. You can't win a draft. You can't necessarily win a draft, a fantasy football league year in the draft, but you can sure lose it because
Yep.
if you mess up those first couple of picks, you're screwed the rest of the
Yeah,
year.
yeah. I mean, if Saquon or CH aren't what we expect or are injured, we're going to be scrambling. And that's a big part of why, like, I think the odds of Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin and Odell all just being awful and being hurt are a lot lower than Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Saquon. And we've seen that year over year. And obviously there's years where that's not necessarily the case, but I think if you go back far enough, it bears out more often than it doesn't. But
Yep.
anyways, that was fun, Brian. It was good to do a little mock draft. We will be bringing some more fantasy football content your way. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter at NotoriousKRO, at Greasy Rules 14 if you have shows you'd like to see. Drop mentions in the comments if there's, we're gonna try and get some sleepers, some busts, some players to avoid at ADP, that kind of stuff. But if there's certain players you want our take on, or certain draft strategies or whatever, I think we'll do another one of these mock drafts next week. And we'll flip it around. We'll do standard scoring, which, granted, that's at least in our bubble that seems to have gone away, but who knows? And
Derrick Henry, number one pick.
well, no, we're going to take 2 wide receivers early, and maybe we'll draft towards the back this time, and see how our running backs end up. If we're going receiver, and we're grabbing Mike Davis and Leonard Fournette, we'll see how we feel about it.
Oh man,
Brian's stomach is already churning, so that's a great sign. So
uh,
for Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to y'all next time.